Over the past year and a bit, I've been suffering from crippling lower back pain, and it's taken me on a journey to not experience that. So I've been really looking for a good ergonomic office chair, and I kind of don't care how much it costs because I just needed to fix my problems. I mean, nothing can really fix my problems, but at least when it comes to the lower back problems, that would be nice. Anyways, I figured I'd make a video about all the high-end ergonomic office chairs that I've tried or that I've owned. And of course, what better way to do this than to do another tier list? You guys love the tier list videos. They're stupid, but we're going to do one anyways. So I'm going to start with a chair that everybody knows and probably hates. Maybe not everybody hates, but as a baseline so you guys have a sense of how I'd rank things, the IKEA Marcus. This is a chair that I used extensively during grad school. I used it for over a year, and it's probably responsible for much of the crippling back pain that I deal with today. I didn't like it, so that goes into slow torture tier. The Aeron Classic. Now, this one is a chair that I used for a very long period of time, and I used the C-size variant of it. I always found that I had to scooch my butt to the very bottom part of the chair, like to the back of it all the time, in order for the curve of the Aeron to even make any amount of sense for the C size of it. So I felt that even though I'm a big guy, I'm 6'1", the shape of the back contour wasn't quite right for me. But I've tried other Aerons in the B size since then, and they were too small. So I don't really know when. I feel like I belong somewhere in between. Also, the lumbar support system that they had on it, like I'm not talking about the long one that goes across, but like the kind of squarish pad thing, that wasn't great. That was not particularly effective on this one. So maybe for some people this one works, but for me it goes into D tier. The recline on it was pretty good, but I didn't love much of the rest of the structure to do with it. Now, moving on to the Aeron Remastered. Now, the Aeron Remastered goes into B tier for me. It's quite a bit better, particularly for the lumbar support and for the overall back pain issues that I was dealing with. But the problem with the Aeron series in general is you can't really move in any way other than that more kind of like rigid structure that it has you sitting in. It's very much the sit in me this one way or you will be punished kind of vibe. So if you're out there looking for a chair and you want to be like, tell me how to sit, daddy, the Aeron series will do that and hope that you fit into, a size B or a size C or whatever, right? But for me, again, it's not higher on this list because I feel like I'm somewhere in between. Now, let's go to the Capisco chair. I actually went to an ergonomic posture therapy session, like a occupational therapy. I don't know what it's called. Something where they figure out, specifically how you work and how your back functions and all that stuff, and then recommend things for you. And they tried to recommend this thing to me. No, this thing it doesn't make any sense for how I sit in chairs. And I realized one of the reasons why is what I feel I need is like two different chairs, one for when I'm reclining and just like watching stuff, and one for when I'm upright doing my work, doing my whatever it is that I'm doing my measurements, all that nerdy stuff. The function for those two things is very different. And I was explaining this, and that's why they were trying to sell me on this. But I just felt that this chair was so many different ways to not be suitable for a core function of sitting in a chair, which is doing this. So D tier, not a suitable chair for me whatsoever. All right, now we're into Steelcase, the Steelcase Gesture. This is the chair that I'm using right now, and this is a slow torture device until death. The seat is extremely firm and very thin, and it's kind of at an angle where you always feel like you're sliding out of the chair. And then when you use the recline, it actually has pretty good mid and upper back support, but the bottom part kind of tips upward into your lower back, and it stretches your lower back in a way that sort of hyperextends that region from the pelvic area. So it has no pelvic support whatsoever, and this is a catalyst for lower back pain. It's a lower back pain simulator. And you might be asking yourself, well, why are you still using it then, you dummy? I put a pillow on it. S tier. No, it's still D tier even with the pillow. I'm using it right now because I'm in between chairs. That's why I'm doing this. I need more recommendations from you guys. Help. The Steelcase Leap V2. Also, this is another chair that I owned at one point. This was better. This was better than, I'm going to put it into C tier because I have an issue with it. Same issues to do with not enough pelvic support, not enough lower back support, the sacrum area or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but basically the lower back that isn't just the lumbar, right? Not enough support there for me. And then I am not a fan of the way that the recline is handled on this one. This is more just about how the backrest reclines. I'm either putting too much pressure on it or not enough pressure on it. And I was never able to relax in the chair when I had it in the ideal position for the recline. But I do concede that this chair is better than the Gesture by quite a bit. And I think if my primary focus was to sit upright and do work stuff, this would be a good chair. This would be higher on that list. But again, an office chair needs to have, for me at least, two functions. It needs to be good at two things: the upright stuff and then the relaxed stuff. And this one was not as good for the relaxed stuff because it's like you're finding that sweet spot and you're like always like in between and it's never relaxed. Didn't love that. All right, Haworth Fern. This one, I'm going to put it into high B, ahead of the Aerons, but no higher than that. This is the chair that I had most recently, and I did have the digital knit version without the lumbar. The lumbar, I tried a version of this chair with the lumbar in it, and the lumbar is definitely too aggressive. And the curve for the Fern that's supposed to fit in with the natural curve of the spine is lower than it is typically. Actually, I find that for myself, that's mostly okay because I have a fairly aggressive curve to I'm a curvy guy. I got that thickness about me. So the Fern's overall design I felt was pretty good for the backrest specifically. Like the comfort when you lean back in that chair is very good. And the cool thing about the backrest here is that it's kind of like a rugged hammock, like a stiff hammock. So it has a lot of give to that material that's behind the digital knit fabric, if you get that, or whatever the fabric is that you get. And I do recommend the digital knit if you guys are considering this chair. That material is awesome. Yes, it does catch on certain types of clothing, and I've even had it catch on my belt, but it's worth it. Like this material rocks. But I found that without the lumbar support, I would sort of sink in a little bit in an awkward way, and that problem was made worse by the fact that the seat pan is too short for me. I got long legs, and whenever I'd move the seat pan out, there's a gap in the back, and you kind of fall back you sink into the gap, and that sucks. And then the recline on this, the recline is not as good as the Herman Millers. Like I would say it's not even close as compared to the Aeron for the recline. The way that this reclines, it's almost like the hip angle isn't sufficiently open for when you recline. And then combine that with the fact that you're kind of sinking into the gap between the seat pan and the back of the chair. Or if you have the seat pan further back, your legs are going to get numb. I didn't have any real complaints about the armrests. Like, yeah, they're kind of rickety, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. All right, Logitech Embody. This is Herman Miller Logitech Embody. I did also try the regular Embody, but they're close enough to where I'm just going to rank one of them. I'm going to put this, I'm torn between high C and low B. I would definitely put it behind the Aeron and behind the Fern. Would I put it ahead of the Leap V2? Yeah, probably. So the Embody is a great chair for specific people. And I'm not one of those people, unfortunately. So the lower back support is pretty good, and that's largely because of the way that the backrest attaches to the chair, to the seat of the chair. On a lot of these other ones, you'll see a gap in between, and for the Embody, it's sort of fixed in there, and that's actually quite nice because it means that you're going to have an easier time with pelvic support. The lumbar is a little bit aggressive. You can feel that kind of hard plastic in there, but I didn't mind that much. And then the upper back is reasonably supported, but there's no support in the middle of the back. There's like a hole there or a gap that I found myself constantly like hunching into or sinking into. And while there is some adjustability to the back, it felt like it was designed in a way that's a little bit cross purposes, right? Like there's this design that's meant to be super flexible and you can do all this stuff, but then in order to solve the problem of having the back actually fit you, you got to sit in a very specific way with a very specific adjustment that doesn't work when you are in any of these other ways of using the chair. So I found that while this is probably the most well-built chair out of all of the chairs on this list, and actually the Embody has the best seat design out of any chair that I've used. I love how wide it is, and I love that you can just kind of unfurl it forward if you want to add more length. It doesn't have the right back design for my back. And that's a shame because I bought this chair. I was ready to be like, this is going to be it. This is the chair. I so wanted it to be the chair. It just isn't, unfortunately. So it's with much sadness that I have to put this $2,000 plus chair into B tier. Herman Miller Mirra 1. I'm going to put this into C tier. I'm going to put it ahead of the Leap V2. No, probably behind. So the Mirra 1 is actually an underrated chair. It's a good chair. The main problem is that the backrest is made of this extremely stiff, hard plastic material. And if you, as a big guy like me, if you move your arms like this at all, your shoulder blades the back plastic digs into your shoulder blades as they move. And that got very uncomfortable. But I think for all the rest of this chair, it is actually quite underrated. And the same is true for the Mirra 2, which I'm actually going to put into A tier. I think the Mirra 2, specifically with the butterfly mesh, is better than the Aeron's. That mesh material fixed the problems with the back on the Mirra 1. So it's not just that they covered it with a different type of mesh material, it's that the underneath part of that backrest is also a more compliant material. With the Mirra 1, it's just this really rigid, hard plastic frame which digs into you. Also, the way they did the seat on the Mirra 2 and that sort of pulling out feature in the front to make it extend for longer legged people like myself is nicer than it is on the Mirra 1. And there's a couple of other things that they did as well, like they made some changes to the arm adjustments, but I don't really care too much about that, but it's fine. And another thing about the Mirra series that puts it ahead of the Aerons for me is that the outside of the seat is not this contoured frame. It makes it so you can actually sit in multiple different positions. You can move around a little bit, and it's not as inflexible when it comes to how you sit. And I really appreciate that. Add to that the fact that it has a very similar recline system to the Aerons, which is, in my opinion, the best. And so this would be actually an S tier chair for me, if not for one thing, and it's that I wish the lumbar support system could be a little bit more flexible with how low it goes. And I wish that it had some sort of seat pan attachment more similar to the Embodies. With this design, I don't think you can do that. So A tier on the Mirra 2. Now we're into the Ergocentric chairs. You can find these at Staples, but you can also find them in various other places. This is kind of like the highest end chairs that you can find at Staples, maybe. I could be wrong about that, but that they are some of the higher end ones that you can find there. Like when it's fully decked out and fully kitted out, they're similarly priced to many of these other ones. So the first one here is the Ergocentric, and I believe they're on the version 2 or version 3 of this. I rate this highly. I would actually put this ahead of the Embody for myself. I think for other people, it's probably behind the Embody. The issue with this series is that the recline is nowhere near as sophisticated. But the cool thing about this chair is that the backrest is very well designed, and it also has an uppy-downy bit for the backrest. So you can change where the curve is for your spine. If you're a taller person, you can lift up the backrest to fit the curve of your spine. Or if you're a shorter person, you can move it down. It does also have like an inflatable kind of lumbar thing in the back if you want more lumbar support, which is good. And there is also a ton of adjustment on this depending on if you get the multi-tilt or the synchro. I forget the name of it. I believe the multi-tilt doesn't have a 2-to-1 ratio for the back to the chair, whereas the synchro is. I could be wrong about that. But the multi-tilt also gives you more customization options. When I used this chair, I used a synchro mechanism one, and I feel like I wish that I'd used the multi-tilt one, which sounds weird, but it makes sense if you use a footrest. Because if you use a system where the whole chair tilts back, your legs are going to go up, and that's going to mess with circulation for your legs if you don't have some sort of footrest to elevate the lower portions of your legs. But I think that I would recommend the multi-tilt over the synchro, because the synchro, it wasn't really that supportive when reclined. Right? You didn't feel like you could actually relax in the reclined position, even though the backrest itself was comfortable. The T-centric, they have several different versions of this. I'm going to put this into C tier, actually. I just preferred the Ergocentric. It just felt more comfortable for the back. With the T-centric, they got rid of the upholstery and put mesh instead, and you could get it with the mesh back and a mesh seat, or you could get a version where there's a pad for the seat, so it's an upholstered seat. It's the same issues that I had with the Ergocentric. I just preferred the back of the Ergocentric. Actually, I should put it behind the Leap V2. I like the Leap V2 better. But again, the same benefits for this chair is that it is very flexible for how high or how low you put the back function, the backrest, and that makes it more accommodating of a wider range of different back shapes and sizes. All right, now we're on to the Humanscale Freedom chair. I did not like this chair. It was the same problem that I had actually with the Gesture, where they have this kind of free-floating backrest piece, but when I put my back against it and tried to kind of sit back, the bottom would tip up in a weird way and do that same thing that the Gesture does, where it kind of like distends and like it contorts me into this weird position that's unnatural for me. And then the other thing I noticed was I was constantly like this. You get the double chin, like it felt like it put a weird strain on my neck with how the backrest would tilt relative to the headrest, which I didn't like. And then we get the Lifeform Ultimate Executive. This is the closest chair to an S-tier chair that I've ever sat in. The foam material is insane for this. This is unreal. If you ever get a chance to sit in one of these, it's nuts. Now, they have a ton of different options for how you can customize it. The one that I spent quite a long time considering buying, and these are very expensive chairs, and that's the only reason I have it. It was a fabric-based one. And it was one of those experiences where I sat in it and I thought immediately, like, oh my God, like this is actually supportive and comfortable. And I feel like I could fall asleep. It was crazy. The backrest also can be elevated and lowered, similar to the Ergocentric chairs, which is good. I had two issues. One was the recline I didn't feel was as nice as what you get with the Herman Millers. The other issue is I would worry about the QC on these. There have been reports of QC not being great and there's some wobble to these chairs. I believe that. I don't know enough about this brand. I know they're Canadian, but I don't know enough about their track record relative to Herman Miller, right? If you're spending this kind of money, you'd probably want the confidence that it's going to last a long time, and I don't know that I have that about Lifeform. Not to say they won't, but I just don't have that kind of confidence. So because of that, I'm going to move it down to A tier. It is still one that I'm on the lookout for if I can find maybe a used one, or if there's some configuration, somebody's making a sale or something like that. And that is going to do it for my chair tier list. There are two chairs that I would love to still try. Maybe I'll get them and then do a video on them or something. Number one is the Anthros chair. That one seems very interesting to me. It's just hard to get in Canada. Number two is the Libernovo Omni chair. And that one I can get, and I might get it. But based on this list, if I were to buy a chair today, the one that I would most likely purchase is the Mirra 2. As far as what I would recommend to people, if they're going to spend thousands of dollars on a chair, I would say try the Lifeform if you can. The Embody, you have to try it. If it fits you, this could be the best chair because it's built way better than everything else, and the seat is incredible. And really, that's it. I mean, the Fern is a good chair, but again, it has some problems with its design. Like if you're a long-legged person, then this is going to be a problem. But I would basically skip most of the others. Aeron Remastered is pretty good too. But that's it. That's going to do it for this video. Let me know if you have any other suggestions, and I will look them up. Because I am still suffering. Believe it or not, I would like for my suffering to end. It's just not in the cards for me, I guess. Maybe one day. Okay, that's going to do it for this video, and I will see you guys some other time. Bye-bye.